Okay, in this video we're going to discuss how we go about creating eyes for our digital human, and this is going to be a procedural method, so it's not going to require textures outside from things that you can create outside of Maya. So this is just to give you an idea what we're going for. Just a quick render. Not so quick. Okay, so something along the lines of this is kind of what we're going for. So I'm going to start from a file where I don't have this set up, and from the beginning of the I guess the head modeling process, we were using a sphere as a placeholder for what our eye socket was going to become. And I'm going to be using that placeholder as my actually I'm already too ahead on this one. Let me just go back a couple of files earlier. Let's see. Let's go to this guy right here. Again, alright. So we've been using again these kind of placeholders for the eyes to be able to model our eye around it. Alright. So I'm going to begin by using a primitive sphere to begin with, but if you're more comfortable using something like a sphere or something like that, that's also that you can use something you could be using for this process. So I'm gonna go ahead and pretty much just isolate this guy right here, or I can just kind of isolate selected. Alright, and actually I have pretty good geometry here that I can kind of start with. Before you start modeling the eye, you kind of have to be somewhat aware of what the anatomy of the eye is like, and then the eye is going to be somewhat based on what an actual real eye needs to have. So starting from the Sierra, which is this white area right here, again, which usually kind of goes into the eye socket as a sphere. You also have the cornea, which again, some people think that our eyes are actually a sphere, but it's actually, if you notice the shape, it actually kind of has a little bit of a bump here, which is where our iris and our pupil would appear. So we want our eyes to actually have a similar appearance to this shape. So we're actually going to be constructing this in two steps, because we need a piece of geometry that that's going to be the cornea, and then we're going to use another piece of geometry for what's inside. So again, I'm going to be using this primitive geometry that I've been using since the beginning. So and again, the thing about this is that I probably want to use this sphere at this scale for the cornea, and then make an instance of it to make the inside parts, because my eyelid's already being kind of modeled and shaped to kind of fit this shape right here. So I want to begin by adding a little bit of geometry to my eye first, okay? Because again, I want to have a little bit of kind of sharpness here around my iris. So by having the sphere, I'm just going to go ahead and go into my edit mesh, insert edge loop tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and add a couple loops here. and they have to be relatively kind of close to each other, because we want to create a little bit of a sharp edge here for this. Okay, so something along the lines of this. Another thing that I want to do is select this vertex right here, and I want to chamfer it. Alright, and whatever I get by default is fine. The next thing I'm going to do is make a copy of this. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control D to duplicate it. Alright. And if it helps to kind of label these for you not to get confused, you can do that in your attribute editor. I'm just going to go ahead and select these. I want to freeze transform them. I want to also delete their history. Alright. And again, the first one on top I probably want to use to create the cornea. So I'm going to kind of label that, or this one for that. Alright. And I want to be able to kind of switch back and forth between the two. So if you want to use your layers to keep one kind of hidden while you're working on the other one, you can do that. You can also use the outliner. Alright, and if you ever want to hide something, for instance, this is going to be the wait, let's see. Again, it's not labeled here as a cornea, but let me just, I can name it in my outliner so I know what it is. And if I want to hide it, I would hold let's see, Control H. Alright, and I'm left with the other one, and you can see that in my outliner this is hidden. If I want to unhide it, I would do Control Shift H, and it will bring it back out. So just so you know that I'm going to be using that method to kind of switch back and forth between the two. Another thing you can do, again, just to kind of make things easier, since we just freeze transformed everything, you could also just kind of move it to the side if it makes it easier for you. And again, I'm not. My pivot points right now, it's at the center, so I mean at the at 0, 0, 0 there. So I'm just going to select both, and I can also center the pivot for both, so I can move them from here. Eventually I'm going to have to kind of move my pivot if I want to mirror this geometry, but for now, again, you can either hide the other one or hide it in a layer or just move it. And since this has been freeze transformed, if you want to put it back to where it's supposed to go, just come in here and type 0 and it's right there. Okay, so again, I'm just going to be using my outliner for this, so Control H, and it's going to hide it. Alright. So again, this one kind of needs to be a little bit smaller from the cornea, and I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to label this one as the actual eye. Alright. Alright, so we need to kind of scale this down a little bit. So I'm just going to go to 0.98 on all axes. Alright. And again, just to kind of and the cornea is supposed to be a clear, kind of transparent layer on top of this. So I'm just going to go ahead and select it, kind of bring it back out. Control Shift H. Alright. I'm going to right click on it and go into here into my assign new material, and I probably want to use or some sort of existing material if you have one, but I'm just going to assign a new material. I need something glossy, so I could do a blend or a Lambert for this, or Fong actually. So I'm going to be using a Fong for this, and I'm going to go into the attribute editor for this material, which is right here. And again, I can label it and call it Cornea 2, so I know what it is. And go into the transparency and just kind of bring it down. And And alright, as you can see, it's a little transparent right now. Again, it's not showing through, not sure why. Let's see, 6, 5, 6. Interesting. Okay. But again, I don't really need to do much with my cornea. I can just do a quick render just to show you what I'm supposed to be seeing here. It's just, again, we're seeing just it's just a little bit kind of over what the eye mesh is going to be. It's just going to be right over it. And the only change that I'm going to make to this one is selecting the chamfer vertex that I created here. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit. Alright, and again, you can probably maybe scale this up a bit just to kind of make it a little more round, like that. Alright, and again, this is all the changes that I'm going to make to this geometry, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a Control H to hide it. Oops, I selected the wrong one. Alright. Okay, now I understand what I did wrong. Alright, I think I assigned the wrong texture to the wrong thing. Okay, let me just fix this real quick. I don't know why I went to this one, but I don't want the transparency to be on this one. I want the transparency to be on this one right here. Okay, that's so weird. Let me just go to my hypershade. Just do it through there so there is no confusion. Alright. So this material right here, this is not going to be the cornea, this is going to be the eye material. Alright. That's that blend. And this is the fong right here that I wanted for this one. And this is the one that I want to have the transparency on. Okay, so let's just go back, put this to 0. And again, the idea is that you see a little bit of a layer here on top of this, and I want to select this guy, select the face, move it out. Again, just to kind of make sure it's kind of moving out on the right axis, because right now it's kind of moving kind of sideways. I'm going to double click on my move tool, and I'm going to move it along my normal average. Okay, just going to move it out one more time, scale it up a bit so it has a little bit of a roundness to it. Alright, and that's all I need to do with the cornea, so I'm just going to go ahead into my outliner and hide it one more time. So Control H. Okay, now I'm going to focus on the actual eye. So I'm going to select again that chamfer vertex, and I'm going to be moved in this one backwards like this, and I can scale it up a little bit to kind of keep it rounded if I want to. Alright. And I'm also going to add another edge loop around here, just so I can kind of keep a sharp kind of area for the cornea when I come into the texturing process. So I'm going to go into my edit mesh and add a loop around here. Okay. Alright. So the next thing I want to do, it's actually apply a material, because again, we're going to be texturing our eye procedurally. So it already has a blend material to it, so I'm actually going to be using that material for my eye. So I'm going to go into the color right here and click on the checker box here. Alright, and this is going to take me to my create render node. I want to use the ramp material. Alright, and now I'm going to be assigning colors to changing the default ramp colors into the colors that are going to make up my eye here. So the back of the eyes probably needs to be some sort of kind of like a dark red or pink. Alright, the middle of the eye needs to be off-white or white. Alright. And then, again, my character is going to have brown eyes, so I can select this one and change it to a brown color. Alright. But again, the thing about the gradient ramp is that we can't have, we need to kind of create a couple more colors here in order to be able to create the sharp kind of edges that define the eye. Now, to make it easier for me, I could very well select these polygons right here and assign a brown material just to this specific area. But the thing about the eyes is that they don't have. If you look at our eye, it doesn't really have kind of that sharp edge going into the iris area. It's a little bit of a blur there. So we want to keep actually some of that into a procedural texturing. So what I'm going to do, it's click here on my gradient. Alright, I'm going to have another brown color that's going to come out here. I want to click here on my white and actually get these two really close together so I can have a little bit of kind of gradient, kind of like a blurred sharp edge going into the iris here. And again, I need to move it into the right location here. Alright. Alright, something along the lines of that. Alright. The pupil area, I can do one of two things when it comes to the cornea. When it comes to the pupil, sorry. I could either select that geometry and assign a really like a black material to it, because it's supposed to be it's actually supposed to be a hole in there that kind of light kind of goes through it and then it goes into your eye, and but this is supposed to be a hollow area. There's really not supposed to be anything in there, and that's why we see black there. So you could either go here and again we want to assign a new material to this, something like a surface shader. Alright, and again maybe my pupil's a little bit too large, so I can kind of scale it down if I need to still. And I'm going to be scaling that using my normal average here. Alright. So that's one approach. The other approach that you can take is actually kind of getting rid of that geometry. Alright. And then when you apply lights and things in your scene, it actually it will look black because it's hollow in there. But again, for the purposes of this example, I'm just going to keep this as a surface shader that I'm just going to label as the iris. The pupil. Sorry. So I know what it is. All right. And the cool thing about the gradient or this ramp material here is that even when you have something like this, you can actually still go into the selected color and add materials. So for our iris here, we're gonna need to add something that kind of looks like this detail right here, right here. And so again, you can do one or two things. You can actually find a texture or paint a texture or something like Photoshop and just map it in there. Alright, or you can find a procedural texture within Maya that that you could try and simulate that specific look. So I just gotta make sure if you're gonna use a procedural method, again, just gotta make sure that you have a color that you can kind of map that to. And I'm gonna be using this brown right here, or as a matter of fact, I'm actually gonna use this one right here. So depending on which one you have selected, the settings here are going to be very specific to the one that you have selected. So if I have this one selected, anything that I do to these settings are just going to affect that color and nothing else. So I'm going to go into the selected color, alright, and then click on the checkboard here, and I want to find or use one of these procedural materials to create the detail. So again, from experience, I know that the water works really well for this. So one of the things that I'm gonna have to do for this to look, again, we only see like kind of like a gray right here, but I'm actually gonna have to repeat this pattern a couple times for it to be kind of visible. So I'm just gonna go up to 15 here, see if I can actually see it on my viewport here. Doesn't seem like it is working. Let's see. Alright, I'm actually going to my Place 2D texture to actually, I think I might have maybe repeat the wrong texture there, so I'm actually going to go and do that again one more time here. And I'm still, let's see. Here, okay, it's gotta be this one. Just repeat it a couple more times. And again, I just want to make sure that it's showing on my viewport. Doesn't seem to be doing that. Let's just do a quick render. Probably want to minimize the size of my render here so it doesn't take that long. Let's just do something like 600 here. Alright, let's try this. Okay, and again, you're seeing that again we're getting that water procedure material to actually create something along the lines of what we have here. Again, it's not going to be perfect. You can go into the settings of this kind of water material and just play around with it, see what you can get. I'm just going to leave it as is. And but again, we have kind of the gray or black and white procedural colors happening there. We actually need to change that for this to work. So I'm going to go into the color balance here, and I'm going to change the colors here. It's probably going to have to be some sort of dark brown. Alright. This one, brown. It's probably the same or something a little lighter. Alright, and again I want to do an aerial render of that. Alright. And again, let me just and again, we used a procedural texture to kind of create the look of our iris here. We can actually use similar methods to actually texture on the Sierra area of our eye here. Again, if you want to find some procedural material that kind of simulates the look of veins and stuff like that, you can do that. Again, I'm just gonna move this up a bit so it's a little bit off-white and not necessarily all white there. Let me go back here and unhide this. So Control Shift H. Alright, and now I have my cornea there as well. Okay, and now we need to kind of make sure that everything's kind of fitting properly. Alright, and then it's just kind of a matter of going into the process of kind of making sure that it's kind of the eyes are kind of looking right. And again, one of the things that I didn't do in this demo is to actually kind of go into making sure and checking that this area of the eye was going to be big enough to cover the whole area, which is something that I in my final version for this I actually I was more mindful of. So let me just go here. Let's go to this one. Okay, and again in this version of this file, once I had my eye kind of procedurally textured and I had everything there, I kind of brought back an image plane of what I was referencing for my model to kind of make it fit the same way that that my original reference images kind of had the placement of the eye. So basically, let's see, I went into my material here. Again, this guy has a lot of history here, so I can just kind of get rid of that. So I can just get to the material. So I'm going to delete by type, delete the history, and go to the let's see, what was I trying to do here? I'm going to the skin texture material, so I can just kind of play with the transparency a little bit, so I can kind of see through this. I think another thing that I got going on here in this file is that everything's kind of been divided in layers, so I can just hide that. Alright, and again, I kind of went in here and kind of moved my vertices around so the eye was kind of doing the same thing that my reference images was doing. Another thing that I added was this kind of pink kind of piece of geometry here, and again, that's something that the tear duct kind of area. It's something that all eyes have, alright, and it's something that these models it needs to have in order to kind of feel realistic. But again, notice that it's not something that's really attached to my body or the eye itself. It's something that I can just have there, and it's supposed to again just kind of simulate that piece. The reason why it's not attached to my body geometry or the eye is because it's something that doesn't really need to deform. Okay, if I were to attach it to the body and I was to rig my eye and I needed to let's say I had a section of bones or something here that was taking care of my blinking, this piece of geometry will be something that I will have to kind of go in there and select those vertices and tell them not to kind of have any for the bones to have no influence on them, but I can kind of avoid that just by kind of keeping it separate and then when it comes to the animation process, is something that's going to be linked up to like a major bone in my head or something like that. So again, this is just something that's added in into the model, but it's not really attached to anything. It's just kind of sitting there. And let me just kind of bring back my eyes. Okay. Alright, and that concludes on the lecture on how you create a 3D eye using procedural textures. And again, keep in mind that if you want to use let me just hide this guy right here real quick. Control H. If you want to use actual textures of actual eyes, the RAM material, it's something that's going to allow you to do that, because you can still go in, select the material, and assign specific maps to those areas. And unwrapping the eyes, actually something that you can actually do as well. And again, if I go into my UV texture editor, it kind of gives you an idea on basically what's happening here. Alright, so again, this is kind of like the automatic kind of unwrap that comes with a sphere, and this is the gradient map that we just applied to it. So if you're ever having any issues with your textures, even if they're procedural, they can all be addressed through your UV texture editor. And again, if you wanted to use an actual texture of an eye, it's something that you can kind of map out here. Or again, I could go into the process of just kind of selecting this area right here. Let's see, let's just grow that region. Alright, let's just say that I want to separate this, and I could use something like a planar UV, or we could even do an automatic. But now that I kind of spread it out like that, I can actually take it into a program like Photoshop and apply the actual texture of an eye, if you want to do that. So again, different methods that you can go about this, but starting from a procedural is going to allow you to do some really interesting stuff. Alright, that concludes this lecture.